Does that mean we don't need an official?
I think we do, right? Are you not
She's
voting?
not
I'm not a voting.
But
Not a
don't we
voting
only
member.
need 3 people?
Now that Andy has resigned,
Oh, how many active members do we have?
there's
5, right?
Shira, and Jim. So yes, I
Maybe,
guess we've got
yeah.
to
Andy,
leave 5 of
Andy
them.
and I are, the guy who's usually on Zoom. He's,
Anthony.
yeah.
But maybe you could stand.
You're right. Well,
I
we're
don't
3
know
out of
what you
5.
did
So
down
Three out of
in
5
the
3 out
past.
of 5.
Yeah.
So we're okay. All right. So we
Alright,
can start.
okay.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, you can be deputized, I like that.
Do you have a Bible? Do you have the Bible?
All right. Well, do we have any announcements or updates? We have John's official appointment, right?
do.
Oh, that is
That's
so
important.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's definitely an announcement. That's wonderful.
Oh, I'm so happy, accepted.
I was also happy to accept.
Yeah, yay.
That was a nice press release there. and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's
That
good.
was very
Well, that's,
And Charlie, I mean, I sent that.
you did.
forward,
You want to
so-
say anything more about that?
Well, the Friends of Public Health met on Wednesday, and as part of their agenda, they had a specific communications proposal to try to message out areas of public health interest in very short bites or so. Podcasts like 3 to 7 minutes or so, something that go on the Brookline Interactive Group site, big. So they agreed then to fund a membership which allows them access to that venue. And since their proposal encompassed or acknowledged, obviously, the Department of Health as well as ACPH, I felt it's just important for people to be aware of it.
Yeah.
And I guess ultimately, John, to ask you to see like how should we be acknowledged in, let's say, the promotion of that, or even as they publish things or so? Are we sponsors per se? Because, you know, it's Friends who are actually presumably funding and driving it. They'll clearly ask for our involvement, but, you know, again, that's an independent group in theory, you know, versus a public entity or so, in case there is any backlash to any of the information ever conveyed, like on vaccinations, et cetera. John, I guess that may be something to talk with town council about how we are acknowledged in that program, because clearly we support it philosophically. Yeah. But
Yeah,
not sure we're sponsors.
And I expect
You talked to Pat, right? about this?
yeah, and I expect there will be opportunities for ACPH members to be part of it.
Yeah.
There will be staff that'll be part of it at times, I'm sure. So no, it's a good point and something to be thoughtful about as we move forward. But exciting. I mean, I
Yeah.
appreciate Chris
Yeah.
Chanasalka coming up with this idea.
She's very, very dynamic.
Yeah,
That's great.
for sure.
Yeah. So again, I just, for information purposes, that certainly.
Can those be, I mean, it's wonderful that Big is putting them there, but that's probably not the most visited site in the universe. So can you repost these things on YouTube?
Yeah, so they'll be on YouTube, they'll be on social
Instagram, or
media, yeah.
whatever? Okay, all right, good. Just wanted to make sure. All right, good. All right, those are good announcements and updates. Anything else?
I think everything else is probably under the director's report.
All right, good.
Cheers here.
Oh, good. Can you see her? Good. Oh, there you are. All right, very good. Excellent. All right, we are open for public comment. Do we have any members of the public? I don't see any.
Nope.
Oh, those guys, you think we would be much more interested. All right, well, hearing none, we will close the public comment period. Okay, approval of the September ACPH minutes. John, I sent you a note, there was
Yeah.
something in the minutes, and it'll maybe come up later in this, but the renter's handbook, is that being handed out by constables at the time of eviction, or is it more broadly accessible?
That was how it was described initially. That was the original
Initially,
draft.
right.
So I think that's okay that it's in the minutes described that way because that's how it was when we
Okay.
discussed it last month. It has evolved. Alec was invited tonight.
Yeah, he told me he was gonna. be-
Okay. So we can talk about how it's evolved over the past month or each.
Okay. Did we lose Shira, or we just
No,
can't
she's
see
here.
her?
I'm here.
Okay,
I
all right.
approve.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Good. All right, well, then with that minor clarification or question, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? I move to approve the minutes. Is there a second? All right, all in favor? Yay. All right, any opposed? Are you opposed to the minutes?
No, there's just a slight delay. I approve.
Actually, that reminds me, we should probably do roll call. If voting members are remote, don't we have to do a roll call for everybody? I know it's a little bit tedious, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Well,
I think that's best practice.
We'll do a roll
Apologies.
call. Then, Shira? Are you here?
Yes.
All right, Rosemary
I'm here. Here.
Here,
and Charlie, here, good.
Oh,
And Mary.
sorry, this was
Mary?
the affirmative, not the roll call, apologies. Roll call meaning having everybody voice vote
Ah,
individually so that because
Oh, yes, I understand.
I don't know if it's for ADA compliance or open meeting law, but I just know it's a best practice, so I
oh,
apologize.
roll call for the vote.
For the vote, yes.
Okay, all right.
Instead of hands.
For
yeah.
the vote, then Shira, will you say yes?
Yes.
Shira affirms,
Rosemary says yes.
Len says yes.
and so does Charlie. Okay, good. There we go. All right, well, let's move on then to the items of business. We have a relatively uncontroversial town meeting coming up in a few weeks, let's hope. So we have a couple of warrant articles which were highlighted and people have, I circulated copies of them. So warrant article 6 is really just to bring the town bylaws in alignment with new state rules. There is something in the state called the Dover Amendment, for those of you who are not into the deep weeds of state laws. Basically, the Dover Amendment says that towns can't create zoning to exclude religious institutions. So for example, and this had to do with somebody wanting to build a church or a church school some time ago, probably in Dover. And the state said, no, that's an infringement on religious liberty and stuff like that. So that's what the Dover Amendment is. And the legislature modified the Dover Amendment so as to similarly say zoning cannot prohibit family child daycare programs. So the reason that John and I thought it was appropriate, although again, you sort of have to, the town pretty much has to do this, so it shouldn't be controversial. But since in the CHA, the Child Community Health Assessment, when we did our assessment of the needs of the community, the needs for childcare came up way up there at the top. So we thought it might be worth our sending a note to town meeting simply highlighting the importance of childcare based on our comprehensive assessment of community needs and recommended. So I'm happy to write the first draft of it.
I think it is like a low cost way to ourselves of supporting something that's valuable. Because it doesn't sound like it's really qualitatively doing anything about childcare, but it's just saying we are interested in childcare and making childcare more available and making sure that childcare facilities or home daycares can exist.
Yeah,
It's not really like going out on a limb.
no, it's not going out on a limb at all. We pretty much have to do it anyway, so I think it's not controversial. But I think
Yeah.
it's important, again, the sense, I think, of communicating to town meeting and through town meeting to town that public health is, well, vaccines and rodents are really important. We actually have a broad view
There's
of.
much more. Right, exactly, like just putting like a highlighter under it.
right.
I say great.
That
Should
will
we-
support accessible healthcare.
Childcare.
Childcare,
Childcare.
yes.
Affordable, we don't know.
Really affordable, it's Brooklyn.
Shira, do we, Mary?
One thing I thought of, and I just got to scan it, we
Sure,
saw
sure.
this afternoon, is that it doesn't come under the zoning regs, but it still will come under the licensures and the monitoring of daycare and family daycare regulations and programming. I didn't want to somehow have a little miscommunication on what it comes under, that the others are still enforced. I do think, I remember it said licensed.
Yeah.
Which may mean everything, but it also may not. Because I do know that we have inspections of not just Brookline, but I know the state goes out and
Yeah.
looks at and
License.
approves family
Right,
daycare,
right,
et
right.
cetera, et cetera.
Welcome, Jim. Thank you for joining. Sorry your flight has been challenging, but
I'm home. I got home, so
excellent.
no more waiting on the tarmac, right?
That's good. Probably the weather, probably not a shortage of flight of whatever those folks are that keep the planes from crashing into each other. All right, the next warrant article, again, which I hope will not be controversial, and that's why we initially didn't really include it, but there have been, in the usual manner, of people who don't like changes in housing in our community, some objections. So we included warrant article 7. Warrant article 7 relates to what had been the lower school of the Maimonides School, which parenthetically, the reason I know about the Dover Amendment was I lived on that street and I was not happy when they built it without paying sufficient attention to traffic, et cetera. But I was told basically because of the Dover Amendment, you can't do anything about it anyway. So I learned about the Dover Amendment, some 20 years ago when I was first on Townview. But for reasons I don't fully understand, the enrollment at Maimonides has declined substantially, and they have closed their lower school, and that building now is being proposed to be turned into rental housing, approximately 33 units, a proportion of which will be affordable. And again, since the CHIP very clearly puts housing, both the access to housing and housing at all price points in neighborhoods as a priority, I thought again we could just take the language from many of our previous comments and put in a note. And again, I will sidestep any controversy about whether it's appropriate for the attorneys to be the one who were putting in the zoning articles, or whether there was sufficient notice to the neighbors about all this stuff. I mean, I think that's outside the scope of our attention, and I'll simply suggest that we write something, again, largely copied from what we've written before about the importance of housing.
That is like a public good for Brookline, but we're not gonna get into the little details of
No.
these arguments,
Right.
which sound like big arguments for the people living it, between like lawyers
Mhm.
or whatever.
Warrant Article 9, well, I don't know, somebody want to text Alec? I saw him the other day, he said he was gonna come.
Do we wanna move on to 15?
Yeah, I was
come
gonna
back
move on to
9?
15. So 15, and again, this is one we may or may not feel like it's within our scope, but 15 is simply a warrant article that requests the town meeting endorse, I think it's June as LGBTQ month, and October as another month related to LGBTQ, and then for specific days, calling on the select board to make these again specific months and have programs in the schools, etc.
So
So
it's a
again,
matter of supporting diversity, equity, inclusion. I think we're supportive of this philosophically. The specifics, I think, again, I leave that to the political discussion,
Yeah,
especially because if there is support requested from the town, again, whether it's, events or so, all the costs, let's say attendant of police, security, et cetera, that would be,
Right.
I mean, that's, I think, beyond our scope here at the ACPH, but I think as a matter of, it's consistent with our CHIP.
Jim?
Yeah, I think this makes sense. The only question I'd have, two questions. One is, does Brookline have a number of other such days for other groups? And the other question is, there is sort of a suggestion of a fiscal request in here. And I suppose that's fine. I mean, I think in the context of limited resources right now, I have some concerns about adding to the town burden without some priority setting. I assume that the select board and others would make some priority setting here, but I was a little bit concerned about the financial ask.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, if we write something up, we could try to steer clear of that part of it. There are other, for example, I know we did Asian and AAPI month last
Mhm,
year.
yeah.
We
The Asian's been big.
yeah, so we highlighted that. I know in the previous, and again, town meeting had voted for that a year or two ago. Yeah.
I have a question. If it's a resolution, does usually that carry a fiscal
No,
piece?
I mean, there's
I mean,
no,
it's a resolution, it's not,
it's not a bylaw, and it's not the budget session.
yeah,
So the budget is in the spring meeting. So this is really just sort of asking the select board to kind of pay attention to it.
yeah.
All right, so I'm here. Does anyone want to volunteer to take a stab on writing this? If not, I will, but if anyone else would like to. Not seeing anyone, I'll be happy to just do a first draft. And again, these are going to be very brief notes because I think these are all pretty non-controversial. Well, Alec's not here, so maybe you want to jump in on this one, John. Do you want to explain this, or we can certainly.
Yeah. So we've been having a discussion. So Alec had initially proposed a printer's handbook. I had shared some initial thoughts with the advisory, just to let them know kind of where the impacts would be on the health department. And essentially it was, this will fall in the Office of Housing Stability. The Office of Housing Stability is now not only an office in name only. We have our new Human Service Navigator, whose responsibility is to take on, in partnership with some other departments, some of this work. So the only thing that I had shared publicly so far was just that the department's priorities are to get Find Help off the ground and to start providing support to residents in need. When I spoke to Alec about this, he said he was happy to put the initiation for this about a year out to give us a long lead time to get this information prepared. And I said, that's great, I appreciate that. So that's in there. That language has been in there from the beginning. And then in the meantime, Alec has been doing work with select board member Michael Rubenstein to kind of shape this a little bit more. And so Alec did share with me the latest draft of this warrant article. So there was some discussion about whether or not it would become a resolution versus staying as a bylaw. My understanding is the most recent draft is still a bylaw. You know what? You have access, right? So if I send you the clean copy, you can put it up on the screen and we can all view it together. That's a great suggestion. And so the impetus for this is that in certain cities, they have a resource guide for tenants that they receive when they rent an apartment.
Mhm.
Alec's understanding, having worked with town council and a number of legal experts, is that as a town meeting member, he can't propose the same city ordinance that requires that it be handed out when a tenant receives their apartment. I'm looking behind me, hoping he's behind me, he's not. So the best that he could come up with was this idea that tenants would get this guide, but they get it when they're being evicted or handed a notice of eviction. Our hope is we're going to draft it, we will publish it widely, we will broadcast it, we will educate the public that it exists so that people are receiving it before they're evicted.
Yeah, that would be much better.
But the
Yeah.
warrant article only captures when that notice of eviction is happening, because that was legally what town meeting is authorized to do. Is my understanding of how Alec has been explaining it to other groups.
John, why
Yeah.
couldn't we make something that was like asking realtors or like, I'm sure there's a lot of like private rentals going on, but that this would be something that would be given just at the moment you move in. Like, could it be an online thing? It has to be like a paper. We were talking about paper. I guess it needs to be paper.
It's going to be both. So it'll be like and some of these resources are going to be part of Find Help as well,
Yeah.
right? So as we continue to
Yeah.
do outreach and engage and share Find Help, those legal resources, the financial resources, a lot of that will already live in there.
Okay.
And then some of the other aspects of state law that explains tenants' rights is some of that information that we're gonna have to put into this renter's handbook and make sure it's also available on our website.
Because making it part of a standard rental agreement, that is a check off that the,
Yeah.
landlord has provided this copy at the time you
Yeah.
sign, would be, I think, the
Much better.
best way to sort of enforce it. And then if they claim they never received it or was never acknowledged or not part of that rental agreement, then at least it might put the renter in a better position, when they face potential eviction.
So why, you said that that we're not able to do that, but
It's
other
like-
places are? Is it
Yeah,
city
cities
versus
are allowed to
town?
do it via ordinance. Like city councils can do it via ordinance, but somehow town meeting doesn't have the same authority somehow that
Another reason to support charter reform.
I'm
Well,
Although
I
I
didn't
did
want to
taking
bring
it
that
today.
discussion.
I love town
I'm not really on the other side.
sorry, I'm hedging while I try to get this over to Tanya so she can share it on the screen. Where
I
is it?
guess my question is, why isn't it just something the housing stability unit, which doesn't really exist anymore, can do without it going through town meeting? I mean, couldn't this be a service or a program that the town provides?
It could.
Why does it have to become, I mean, I'm not belittling it, but it
No,
is
it's
a
too
handbook.
much.
And so to have it part of a warrant for town meeting seems to me to be overkill. And is exactly why people are talking about charter reform, because we get our hands into everything. And we don't really need to do that to run a good town. You could run a good town meeting, you could run that without this kind of law, or even a resolution.
Who
Seems to
has
me
authority,
to do anyway.
who does have an authority to tell a landlord what needs to be shared at the time of a lease? Is there someone in the town who has that authority?
That's a great question that I don't have an answer to at this moment.
That'd be subject to mass general law.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's a
It would be state law,
State
but you said in cities they can do it.
Yeah, cities have been able to do it. So that was where I think Alec found the inspiration for this, is he saw it happening in other cities and thought, this is great. Let's incorporate this here in Brookline.
It seems strange.
I mean, couldn't it
I
be?
just teamed.
I guess, couldn't it be a budget item? Not that we're interested at making new budget items right now,
Yeah.
but couldn't it just be a budget item, say, in the housing stability area, and then it could happen? Why do we need to have the impetus of a law kind of thing, or an ordinance? Is it that difficult to get done? It wouldn't be that controversial?
Well, it seems to me that the purpose of a bylaw really would be to require the landlord
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean,
the
simply to
enforcement
create it,
component
Yeah.
to
is
create
what we
it.
want.
You're right,
It
that
would-
can, create it as an administrative function, that we don't need a bylaw to say we should have a handbook. But something that says it has to be delivered,
Yes, okay, I
That
get
would
it, I
need-
get it.
and I guess the question is, I mean, I don't know, how many evictions are there in the town of Brookline in a given year?
That's a good question. I can try to work on getting you an answer to that. I don't have that.
But the problem with this is,
And it feels like that's like closing the barn door after the horse has left. or
Absolutely.
whatever.
I would think evictions are uncommon.
We'd
but
like
I
everyone
think
to know
there's-
their rights.
like
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of things that are not appropriate that the landlord might be doing, and it's good to know your rights, like the landlord coming in without
Right.
telling you,
Right.
they're just like, but there are a lot of,
I mean, it's the one thing for the navigator here to be, let's say, the point person to try to compile all these services that could be relevant to a renter. But when it's an eviction, it's a legal issue. And I guess the question is like, how transparent is that potentially in the handbook? And are there really supports in the town, especially for folks who are indigent to be, or at least housing insecure, to be able to access that? It's one thing to just give them a handbook, but then the question is, are the services really there behind it?
It's a great point. And that came up when Alec presented this. I can't remember which subcommittee for the advisory. It was a few weeks ago. These were the questions and comments
Yeah.
that the advisory had as well, and that led to some of the changes. But it was acknowledged that the staff person here has a social work background, and some of this is very legal, and so it would require both our office to work on it, but also town council to support some of this work to make sure we're getting those legal aspects correct. Yeah, but, you know, and having spoken to Alec, having spoken to the town administration, you know, a lot of these resources already exist. So a lot of this will be relatively easy in pulling together resources that already exist, legal and otherwise. And so where we can do that, we will. Just a couple of the changes that I wanted to point out from the original draft that was in your packet. AC had asked Alec to include a list of definitions, so he's done that in the most recent draft. And then I think the meat of this is really in section 2 here. So it's requiring through the Office of Housing Stability, Select Board may from time to time designate, create no later than August 1st of each year, updates to a statement of tenants' rights. And it will include, let's see, tenants' protections, eviction processes, and the rights of tenants to safe and habitable housing. You know, we already provide, when we do inspections, we provide the information about habitable housing to residents, and I had brought that up in the initial draft. In addition, potential sources of financial assistance, housing stability programs, and emergency resources. Again, I think that's our comfort area and information that we can already provide. And then information on obtaining legal and inspectional assistance related to housing issues. So that's what will be included. The publication, annually published statement on the town's website and make printed copies available. One of the other things that came up in the AC was, you know, we have the top 5 languages here in town, so everything's gonna have to be published in all of those languages, and then residents can also request if they speak a different language, so we'll have to have copies. So that's one of the challenges for the constables. So that piece, the agent, you know, the delivery by the agent of the town is one of the other interesting pieces. So whenever any individual agent of the town participates in the delivery of a notice to quit or any other notice of an eviction-related proceeding to a tenant, they shall, on behalf of the town, cause to be delivered a copy of the statement to the recipient of such notice, either in hand or by leaving a copy at the recipient's last known and usual address, and by first-class mail to the same address. So that gets to some of the documentation of, like, how do you prove that you actually got it to them? And it's only the delivery of let's see, shall apply only to the delivery of the first such notice by such agent of the town of any such proceeding. And then the deadline. So this was the other piece that Alec had promised.
4 months.
4 months, but no earlier than August 1st of 26. So that gives us our staff the time to get this first draft developed by August of 26.
I'll just come back to what we talked about before. It just really seems like a waste of time and money to do this after they've been evicted. Doesn't make practical sense. The law comes out, let's say somebody finds out about it, you can make it like, why did the town do this? What, you know, even in a town meeting, they're gonna ask that.
Yeah.
I just think that I understand that he's found out some legal constraints, but I do think there must be another way around it. There has to be, because it's not practical to do something, to put a new procedure in that isn't gonna go or isn't gonna help anybody.
Hand this back to you. I think
I
James
mean, it
has
just
some
isn't,
advice.
it's not a good implementation of what you're doing, or what we would be doing. And I have another question. My other question is there anything about rent withholding? Let's say there isn't any heat or any hot water or anything. Is there gonna be anything about tenants' rights, about withholding and working with a landlord to get something fixed,
Yeah,
which is a
that's,
state law?
and that's work that we already do. So our
Yes.
inspectional services often get called in when there's issues with heating or
Right.
hot water.
But that could be, you have rights, this is where you go to find out about it.
Yeah.
That might be,
And those are resources that we already share,
Yeah.
and we'll continue, and we'll make sure that those are incorporated into this
Okay.
document if town meeting passes it. And again, I think a lot of these resources are going to be generated regardless of whether a town meeting takes action on this specific bylaw. And I agree, the time to do it is before the eviction, not at time of
well, it's
eviction.
nice to have, I mean, it's a good thing to have, but it's kind of like a public health planning document. It can go on a shelf and never get distributed, you know, or distributed the 1 year and then it falls, just goes away.
Jim?
Yeah, I guess it does get back. Does seem to be driven by the notion of eviction rather than a broader sense of tenant rights, which may be fine. Although I'd be more interested if I knew that evictions happened, 20 times a year, or if it's 2 times a year, for example, then it's not, I mean, there's less value in doing this. So having that information would be helpful. The other is, so I'm still a little lost. At the moment that someone rents anything in the town of Brookline, there's got to be some kind of a written agreement between the renter and the landlord. And I don't know if at that point there's anything that we should be giving to the renters. That's, I think, what we're all driving toward. Is there something that could go at that time? I think, John, you're saying that if you get involved in inspections, then there's something you can give to the renter. But if you're not involved in the inspections, there doesn't seem to be a process by which something is given as the tenant rights by the landlord, which might be very helpful, I think.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so we get involved when somebody requests an inspection and we can provide resources at that time. And then otherwise, what this bylaw does is it simply interjects at the time of eviction, because we have, I guess, town meeting has the authority to instruct the constable to interject at that point, but not at the point of getting a lease between a tenant and a landlord. That the legal aspect of that is beyond me. That's just what I heard when Alec was presenting it initially to AC.
So it seems to me that from ACPH's perspective, again, there's a little like some of the housing stuff that we don't want to get into the weeds of the zoning thing. I think the sense I'm getting is we believe it is appropriate, good, in the interests of public health of the community for renters to be aware of the resources that are available, the rights, along those lines. We believe it would be much more useful for them to receive it, at the time of signing a lease, taking an apartment, than at the time of eviction, and just leave it at that, and not get into, maybe not specifically come up with a recommendation as to whether to vote for or against the warrant article, but just to sort of say, we think this is a good thing to have, and we think it should be more broadly applied, and then kind of leave it to others to figure out, who's going to vote which way because of the narrow restrictions. And they'll have the opportunity. I'm sure town council will be asked questions at town meeting about this. Shira?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to agree with that. I mean, just like everybody said, it sounds like a great idea, but couldn't this be implemented more executive than legislative, and could be publicized to brokers and put in the library and just made available to people? Because at eviction is kind of too late, and making a whole legal process that penalizes if they don't do something that's not the useful time to do it doesn't make so much sense. So I like where we ended up.
Can I add also, eviction is not like a one-day affair,
No.
and so maybe
Hopefully.
there would be a way of intervening like 6 months before they get evicted. Because people don't generally get evicted right away. The landlord is like missing the rent for X number of months, something like this. So it would be logical, but I don't know how we would identify that. Like I wouldn't be we, but how the town would identify when a renter is moving or the landlord is moving towards eviction. Like not when they're saying like today is the day you are being evicted, but more like you haven't paid your rent for 4 months, and so I'm beginning the process. Is there doesn't it seem like it would be more logical then that these like unfortunate souls who are in this situation be like, oh my gosh, let me see about this like emergency financial resource or some like hardship payment program or
significant state resource draft program.
Like to maybe then get it to the point, because I think once the gears of eviction or like already like we're evicting you, constable sending you the notes, like I think it's too far gone at that point, and you can't stop it. So wouldn't it be better if there were such a way to get it to these people who are marching towards eviction once it's become apparent that they may they may be evicted, by their landlord in the next few months for them to get that. Like, it wouldn't come from a constable.
Yeah,
And how could it be directed,
Yes.
from the town authority versus
think it
being self-requested, but being aware that it even exists as a renter's handbook? There's no database per se, or when someone moves into town and is a renter, right, unless they decide to register to vote or register their car with RMV, right, there's no other way really that the town knows who are tenants, who are homeowners, who are,
The census, doesn't the census ask us
No.
those questions? I mean, I
but
remember
town
that.
census,
No?
but it's
We
not
don't do that.
updated on a dynamic annual basis,
I
right?
think they know more
Town
about
census
it.
is
or-
Town
annual.
census
I
is
think we
every
do,
year.
I feel
Every
like
year.
I remember filling that out, but
Okay,
maybe not.
but again, is there access, to say passively, you could, just proactively send out to those addresses or so?
No, right,
Yeah.
that's illogical,
Well, having been a renter in the new renter, and it's not a condo, I do rent, within the last 5, 6 years. All I have is a piece of paper. It's not a very thorough lease, as a matter of fact. It doesn't have all the things. We rent out a summer place, and we have more in our lease about when to leave and when to come and all that. So it's not a lot. It's a very basic, and yet it's probably the largest rental apartment building in the town. And I just have it's on 2 pieces of paper. So unless the management, the people who own and run the building, may have a report that they give to the town, there's nothing.
So I too have been a renter for a long time, now I am not, and I think the lease you get is very variable and it depends on like the legal expertise of your landlord.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it feels like it's like this, and sometimes it's a, thick document. But in addition, I think it would be really nice to get like a booklet, like the Department of Public Works gives you like a little booklet of what you can recycle
Yeah.
and what you need to do with like your batteries or whatever. And then you just like put it in the junk drawer, but then you're like, oh wait, what do I do? But then you think to yourself like, what should I think that those papers are useful at times, and it could be something along those lines. Like these are your rights, this is the council that will protect you, and there's where you can seek that information. But yeah, I
think we all agree this could be a very useful.
right, but
document.
maybe as it's written,
Right.
that it's being given at the time of eviction.
All right,
Or maybe if there's a census, you can include a drop-in, a
Yeah.
colored piece of paper
Yeah.
saying there is a renter's handbook and here's how you access it or so.
Well, on
At
the
least as a
town
proactive
census,
way.
on the town census, they ask you about your dog.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
Oh,
for
yeah.
licensing, yeah.
So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
This does
It's a
seem
great
somewhat
idea.
more important than your dog.
For,
Maybe.
for sure, but they have control over that. We don't have control over the relationship between tenants and their
Yeah,
landlords
yeah. No,
in
we
the
don't.
same way.
That's true.
And so I think,
That's true.
but maybe there's a way to get a sheet in there or something.
A little push to get a pull.
Well, I'm also thinking of people who have volunteered, people about including people who are immigrants, whether they are
Yeah.
documented or not. A whole group of people have gotten together and there's a list of things to do if you're arrested, if you think you might be. There's a whole list of things that people have produced. I'm not saying we do it
Right.
with immigrants, I'm just saying it's evidently something you can
Yeah,
do and that
yeah.
people find useful in
Right.
times of strife.
Exactly, before.
Well, and before, yes.
Right, they got the information before.
Before this gets
Right.
here, right.
Couple
Okay.
things. So Dave is here, and Roland also wanted to make a comment.
Roland, please. Roland?
It was audio was breaking up earlier.
And David, welcome.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry,
Oh.
No, I think we already have that discussion. I was just trying to reaffirm what John was saying regarding the tenant rights. Our inspectors usually provide those tenant rights to the tenants whenever there's a housing complaints that come out to the health department. And I know there was another point about trying to quantify the number of evictions that happen in Brookline. it's kind of a little difficult for the health department, especially when most of the evasion doesn't really come as a report to the health department. It makes it a little difficult for us to be able to have a statistic of that information. So I was thinking about, I don't know how we could be able to gather that information with the health department involved. But in regards to the tenant rights, every time we go out for inspection, we provide information to tenants just to make them aware of their rights in relationship to whatever issues they're dealing with.
Their standards of
good.
housing, yeah.
That's
Like
good.
it's
So it's not as all encompassing as what Alec was hoping to produce in the renter's handbook, but there's no reason as this gets developed that we couldn't start to share additional
Yeah.
resources through, at least through inspectional services, as Roland was saying.
because it does. Why would you be inspecting? Like, because someone made a complaint?
Yes.
I see. So we're already in like the boat is like a little rocky.
Yeah, I mean, but they might not be in the same, I think the
They-
situation could be really different, right? It could be, my hot water heater has failed and
I see.
they haven't fixed it in days. That's a little bit different from,
I'm getting evicted.
I'm getting evicted because I can't afford. But it's still, it's it's one of the spaces where we do engage with tenants where we can share resources for sure.
I would say it's like evidence of an unhappy landlord renter relationship, but the details may not be like leading us to eviction.
And I had shared.
Just a
this-
question I have, if I may. So as part
Yeah.
of the renter's handbook that is being discussed, will there be very concrete, specific information about crossover into public health? For example, if the issue has to do with rat infestation, just as an example, will there be some kind of flow chart that addresses what the Department of Public Health can do to try to ameliorate that, or the steps that one should follow?
Yes, David, we can certainly include that. That's something I actually worked on a couple of years ago when I was trying to get a better handle of all of that. Yeah, so I think this will be an iterative process. I was imagining that our new Human Services Navigator would be kind of the first step at drafting this, because her responsibilities cover some of this, but I'm sure she'd be happy to engage with inspectional services and learn kind of how that works and be able to share that out with residents. So for sure, that type of information would be something we could include. And I think that gets back to what you were saying earlier about the DPW resources that come together in that booklet that they share out.
Booklet is sometimes those things are useful.
But just also to build on David's question or think of the response, with our new human resources coordinator or navigator, what had been traditionally viewed as the Department of Health is much narrower than what we're actually going to be doing with her, because she's actually, I mean, the scope of what you would call health department work.
Oh,
It's
for
health
sure.
and human services
Yes.
department work now, and so some of that work, and some of it will simply be connecting to other resources in the community.
Yeah.
But what's defined as our work is no longer simply, not that it was ever simple, but issues like temperature erosions and hot water heaters and red paint.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's a
Yeah.
broader scope.
Traditionally, that's been our comfort zone,
Right.
right? And that's why Roland leads our largest division. But we're really excited to be expanding human services, and yeah. So we are comfortable doing that, and we will expand into the broader realm of providing additional resources that I think will be just as useful for tenants moving forward.
And John, you're probably not aware, but I had been routinely forwarding information to Sigal about the value of proactive housing inspection rather than simply waiting for complaints. Actually having a more systematic strategy of inspecting units is, from a health perspective, perhaps a better, if more expensive way to go.
Yeah, and in fact, I had that exact discussion, and you won't be surprised, with Alec a couple of years ago, probably in the last 18 months. Because some cities and towns do that, right? They have that strategy, and I know Roland is probably holding his breath right now. I think it's just, we would love to get to that. I think Sigal's point, and Charlie, you can correct me if you guys had this discussion. I hate to speak for her, but oftentimes proactive, many of these these apartments are in such good condition that you've wasted time doing those
Yeah.
those inspections on those apartments, and so complaint-based ends up being strategically a little bit better from a resource
Yeah, from
consumption
research, yeah,
standpoint,
yeah.
because you're really going to the apartments where the most challenges are. We would love to get there. I remember I did some back of the napkin math with Alec. See, I think he was thinking about a fee structure, and it just wasn't. There wasn't a fee structure that would capture the cost of having to bring on those additional staff to get to all of the apartments on an annual basis, or whatever the timeline is, if it's done every 5 years or whatever. So conceptually, love the idea. I think the details and how we proceed are where the challenges lie.
David?
Yes, could there be an in-between approach? So rather than necessarily being proactive on absolutely every inspection or only complaint-driven, there be a randomized where there is spot checking based on some kind of lottery system, or is that an approach that any communities take?
I'll have to look. That's a great question.
Great idea.
I think we can certainly expand housing inspections. I think we just have to realize that it's going to likely require additional staff, and we have to think through strategically how we do it. But I'm happy to talk to other health directors and other inspectional service departments and see what other strategies are out there beyond just doing an annual census or an every 5-year, whatever the turnover is, just to see what options are available to us. For sure. I'll make a note of that one.
Yeah, so DPW might be an example. With the backflow testing, they do it semi-annually, charge $65 per unit per structure in this case. So the question is whether or not you do some sampling within a structure versus trying to look at a multifamily of 16 units and say, do you have to look at each one?
Yep. All right, I think we've covered this one.
Can I
One
throw
more
something
comment.
out?
Yeah,
One more
yeah.
comment. I went to a really good lecture recently about indoor air quality or healthy homes. It was like a children's hospital guy. And, touched on things like gas stoves and mold in units. So what about like doing some inspection, and maybe it's already happening, I have no idea, of these brand new units, like the ones that are gonna happen in my old Maimonides site, and give like a big green check mark, like this is great, this deserves, our stamp of approval from the DPH. And maybe it's something that like the developer could pay for this for new construction. We think this is a healthy home, like a healthy indoor air quality home because they've done the appropriate like insulation, so there's not gonna be mold coming through the walls, and there's enough ventilation, and there's a hood if they have a gas range. Blah, blah.
It's good.
I don't know. So what happens with new construction? There's like an inspection or?
Roland, do you want to talk at all about any of the work that
Sure.
happens, complaints on housing and new housing?
Sure. So as far as indoor air quality, the health department really does not have the appropriate instrument to kind of sample the air, but for new construction, we usually like collaborate with the building department to do an inspection just to ensure that the proper insulation meets the state building code and stuff like that. So that's how it works, but we don't really go in to collect like air sampling to be tested to see just how it meets public safe air quality. We really don't have the appropriate instrument to be able to do that. But the building department does some stuff as far as insulation and HVAC and all that stuff. The building department does inspection for those stuff.
I know at the state level, there's a whole healthy home collaborative.
It's a healthy home. It's
Yeah.
like a
Mhm.
one
Whole,
of the thought people in that.
Right.
And but maybe it's going too far. But yes, this is. I think we should give renters information about their rights, and ideally it would be before the day that they've got all their stuff tossed out on the lawn.
All right.
Is there a need for any other votes on any of these? We talked about all of them, we discussed them all, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to.
Should we vote on this?
Sure. So
I mean, so we've talked about warrant article 6, 7, 9, and now 15. I think for 6,
Did vote, right? That was the one where I asked for the roll call.
Yeah, yeah.
right, okay, for 7, we didn't vote.
I'm-
Okay, so 7 again is the Maimonides,
Yeah, the
Clark
school.
Road School turning
Check
into
into
housing.
housing.
Okay, all in
Rosaries,
favor?
yes. But I think we have,
You
Jim?
move to suggest that ACPH supports
yes, I moved
Article
it.
7, warrant articles. All
Without
right, so in
getting-
the room, we have Rosemary,
Yeah.
Len, and Charlie in favor. Online, we have Shira and Jim in favor, right? Warrant Article 7. Shira, are you in agreement? I can't see your.
I think I'm gonna abstain. I
Okay.
don't know that we need to weigh in on this.
Okay. Any reason? You don't have to explain. You can simply say.
I don't know. I guess I just don't, I mean, I'm pro housing, but I'm not sure that it's a public health, like what we decide to do with zoning is.
And the
I'm just
reason
not sure.
The reason I've generally encouraged us to do that or spoken in favor of it is simply, again, it's one of the 4 priorities on our child community health.
Yeah.
So I feel like.
So can I ask a clarifying
Yeah.
point then? Because I think you said this earlier. So is the message for Article 7 that the CHIP encourages additional housing, and so you're staying out of the weeds of the specifics?
Yes, we're gonna
Okay.
stay out of the weeds of the specifics about, again, whether it's appropriate for the developer's lawyer to be introducing zoning articles or whether there's been sufficient notice to the neighbors. These are issues that were raised in the land use subcommittee's first hearing on this advisory committee. And again, I don't think we have a dog in that fight.
So it's a broader statement.
Right.
of-
That's a philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, we can be for housing, but like if they wanted to make this a school, somebody might have that decision and like it might be hard to find another school site, and I wouldn't be against that either. Like I don't know, being for housing versus like this specific site should become housing. I don't know, somehow that feels a little different.
All right, I think we have a vote, although I prefer you. There you go.
Can I add something really quick? I don't think it's uncommon to request a pre-occupancy inspection. Kind of like what Len was saying, to prevent the problem before it happens. Like, so instead of doing it complaint-based, can we prevent it from issue from happening?
Yes.
So they can, so rentals, right, Rollins? I think they can request inspection before they move in. And that could be something that could be helpful to include in the handout.
But
or
is that at
even-
the cost of the renter to ask for an inspection? I mean, as you do with a home purchase, that's either a liability you take on as a potential purchaser. I'm not sure renters.
I think our inspectors would go and inspect before somebody moves in to make sure that, stove is, turns on, the heat turns on, like all the basics. So I was wondering if that could be something helpful to maybe mention, because a lot of people don't know about this.
And I also wonder, just as in the house, the purchase market, many sellers are now saying, we don't want you to do a housing inspection because, waive it. And I wonder with, our occupancy rates, somewhere around 2% or something like that, 1.5%, whether in fact the landlord would say, sorry,
Yeah, Roland, do you know if it's something that is, if they can request it, can the landlord say no to such inspections?
Yes, Tanya, can you please repeat that question? Sorry.
Yeah, so if a tenant wants to request an inspection before they move in, can they do that? And can the landlord say no? Can they reject the inspection?
Yeah, we have incidents like that before. The only time we will go into to do an inspection like that if the tenants already live in that unit, because the occupant of that unit has to give her access to the unit. That's per the state sanitary code. We cannot just go into our unit if we don't have access to that unit. It has to be an occupant in that unit granting us access to that unit. That's the only way we can go in there.
So they have basically taken the lease.
Okay.
Yeah, they already have to sign the lease to be an occupant of that unit to grant us access to go in and do an inspection. But if the unit is not yours, you really cannot ask the health department to go in there because you're not an occupant of that unit.
Oh, okay, so the timing is, yeah. Because we've gotten calls asking for inspection before they move in, but maybe that's after the lease is already signed. I see. Okay.
All right, so this is around warrant article 9 then, so the vote would be, again, in favor of communicating to town meeting that we are supportive of providing broad information as outlined in the warrant article, and believe strongly that it would be of greater value were it to be provided at the time of lease earlier in the process, something to that effect. So if we have a letter or note to that effect, could we have a vote in support?
I moved to vote
Okay,
and
so
say,
Roseman support, Len seconds, I'm in favor, Jim, I see you in favor, Shira? In favor, good, okay, that one's unanimous. And then warrant article 15 was the one about, again, a variety of ways of recognizing LGBTQ plus rights and history. I think we said that we would write something expressing our support for that, consistent with our belief of the importance of diversity and health, as an important part of something to that effect.
To that effect, with the specifics to be determined by
Right, but
the town meeting mechanism.
that which specific elements and any costs involved, we will, not on our scope. So, okay, if we can put together such a comment. Now, I'm just trying to think, do we need, so let's have a vote on that, and then we'll come back for a question of how we actually do that. So Rosemary, do you want to move something to
Okay.
that effect? And
I'd say yes.
Lynn second,
I
and I'll
second.
vote in favor, Jim in favor, and Shira. This
Sorry,
was
which
on
one?
15, the LGBTQ notification stuff.
Sure, yes.
Okay, so I think that's unanimous. The question now is, I guess, I'm happy to write and draft these. We don't have a meeting, I suspect, before town meeting convenes or before we would need to submit these to get it into the whatever the book is that we all read.
That's right, that's due, I have that date.
When is,
Just have that in front of me too.
Coming up soon. Shira, when is town meeting?
November 18th, 19th, 20th, and December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, as many meetings as necessary.
Right, and I bet we'll do it in 3 days.
So can we give you executive powers to draft these?
Yeah, I will draft those. The only question is, do we need any process for people to look through them, or will you delegate John and me to be okay with that? Because again, we can't,
Yeah, so I think,
because of open meeting rule, we can't meet unless we meet officially. Notice and
you
stuff.
all can't deliberate on the document without
Right.
meeting,
Okay.
without doing it in public.
okay.
So you can
I think,
instruct.
I think you've said pretty clearly what we agreed to. So I think
Okay.
we could give you that authority, and if you misuse it, we'll just impeach you at the next meeting.
Okay.
Or we'll level retribution.
Well, I think I have to strike that from the record.
All right, there you go. Okay, I think we've covered that. Next item on the agenda is our calendar, which has been circulated at least in hard copy, and I think was also.
I did email it out before the meeting.
Emailed
We
it.
did have it.
So this is really informational,
Yeah.
so people should mark their
Answer all our
calendars.
questions.
Yeah, so this keeps us consistent with the third Monday wherever possible, keeps kind of the similar cadence that we've had in recent years. That gives us July and August off and December off, but otherwise we're meeting. And then I think the only other thing to just flag is, I think every month there's the opportunity, if there isn't anything up before the body on the agenda, we could always cancel and delay discussion to the next meeting. But I think we generally met and had enough work to do that
Yeah, for example, I think our next meeting will probably, well, no, I think we still can't make the next meeting because we still need to talk about the tobacco and kratom.
Yes, so those-
stuff like that.
I'll hold off. Yeah, so those are still to be worked out. Yes.
Sharon made a comment that September 21st is Yom Kippur.
Oh. well,
I caught all the holidays, so I apologize for that.
Sure
Thank
we
you for
can,
catching
we
that.
can. Thank you, Sheriff.
We'll update for the next meeting a new date for that one.
Okay. Tanya, good catch.
So Shara-
Shara's comments,
Shara,
and
thank
also
you.
Oh,
Alec
okay.
is here
Good
now.
one.
Alec, we have finished conversation about your warrant article. Hi.
Hi, good evening, folks.
We had quite a few, we've had a quite robust conversation because, you know, our meeting starts at 6. I'm not sure if you were fully aware of that.
I thought it started at 7. My apologies if I already missed that portion of the evening.
I did my best, Alec. I did my best to channel, and having been at the previous AC meeting, I knew a lot of the questions that had come up in the revision, so I shared that all out. So yeah.
I'm happy to confer with you afterwards and let you know, but I think it would be a little unfair to the committee to revisit the conversation again. Thank you for joining us, but.
Well, Charlie, could we ask, was the only thing I think was about whether or not you could somehow put this in the town meeting mechanism as sort of as a requirement at the time of rental? That's something.
So the strong feeling, again, I was trying to avoid this repeating, but the strong feeling of the group is we love the handbook. We think handing it out at the time of eviction is too little too late. And we would have strongly preferred some mechanism to get this universally. We understand their legal challenge abilities. So we're just not sure how useful it is in that context. We're in favor of it. It sounds like our new housing navigator will work on it in any event. But that was sort of our strong sense. And we had a lot of ideas of things that could be included in it, et cetera. So I don't know if you have any comments to that effect, but that was sort of our strong sense of, yeah, we love it, but eviction is a silly time. And by then the horse is already out of the barn.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I don't want to take more time out of the agenda and appreciate the opportunity. I would just say that in general, I agree with, I think, all the sentiments that you've encapsulated here. This was not the preferred model that we wanted to pursue under our warrant article initially. In fact, we looked to Cambridge, Boston, and Somerville for their models to really get a better understanding of what's already out there. And their models, not in the case of Boston, but yes, in the case of Cambridge and Somerville, provide notification not only when a notice to quit is delivered, but also at the beginning of new tenancies.
Right.
Which I think, gets to your point about kind of getting more upstream with the delivery of the notification. The only trickiness in adapting that to Brookline is we have been advised both by town council and by several other attorneys in town meeting that model legislation that has been put in place by ordinance in Cambridge and Somerville rather would likely not be approved by the Attorney General's office. And there's a whole legal intricacy there that I'd be happy to provide more details on if necessary. But I just wanted to stress that the petitioners largely agree, I think, with the critiques here. We are looking to follow up, hopefully, Warrant Article 9's hopefully successful passage with further action. One thing we're looking at very closely is whether or not we can come to a voluntary agreement with the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office so that they will voluntarily provide this notice whenever they act as a noticing agent. That will capture a lot of the notification traffic that happens in Brookline currently that isn't directly done by an agent of the town. The other piece we are looking into right now is whether we can expand the notification requirements to non-governmental third-party noticing agents. So we're hoping to follow up Warrant Article 9 with some subsequent actions to flesh this out more and try and address some of those gaps that are resulting from us having to tinker with the existing model somewhat because of the town structure. So I just add that for folks' edification, and if there are any other questions, happy to address them. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Alec.
Thank you, Alec.
All right,
so let's move on to the director's report.
Yeah, any questions? I apologize, there
Yeah,
wasn't
there
a
was-
policy
there
update
was-
in there.
Yeah, there was limited.
It was limited this month. Which probably is more a reflection of what my calendar looked like over the last couple of weeks, so I apologize for that, we'll do better. The one update I wanted to give that wasn't in there on the policy front and just alluded to it is that we have some regulations that we discussed the last meeting. Those need to go to town council first, so I need to wait for them to give me feedback and make those revisions before I can bring it back to ACPH. And at that point, we'll have an official public hearing. We've heard from one member of the public on Kratom that would like to provide some feedback to ACPH. So
Interesting.
when we get to that, I'll Tanya forwarded that message on to me. So I'll make sure that we let them know when that's going to come before ACPH for a public hearing. And we can get their input as well, and I'm sure there'll be others. So we're just in a holding pattern, and then I'll let you all know once legal town council's had a chance to review those. My expectation is that regulating kratom and synthetic cannabinoids will be faster, just because the tobacco regulation is part of town bylaw,
Yeah.
and so that might take a little bit more time to review. But I'll let town council let us know what order makes most sense, then I'll bring those back. But I would like to act on those soon if we can, so that's the policy update.
And I noticed you had the first meeting of your new Brookline Coalition for Wellness and Prevention. And
Yes.
how did that go?
It was fantastic. Layla McGeorge ran that meeting. She did a wonderful job. This was this past Thursday. We had probably 30 to 40 people in the room.
It says 52.
Okay, 52. So I underestimated. Shame on me. I trust they had registration, so I
Yes,
trust that number. So yeah, it was a great discussion. We met for I think about an hour and a half over at Town Hall. Well represented by a lot of different organizations inside and outside of municipal government. This is the second time we have tried to relaunch the coalition, but I think we'll be much more successful this time because we have someone like Layla who has the experience and the background in this and is really focused on this, where this was a kind of a shared responsibility across a number of staff before. Now there's a point person whose job it is to keep everyone coming together on a consistent basis and doing this work. So really exciting, a lot of energy in the room, a lot of great ideas, but really just the start of, so it was, what's the history, what broadly is a coalition, what's the work that we expect to do, and that was sort of as far as we got, but a lot of engaging conversation happening in that room on Thursday morning, so that was great.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And the numbers, it just happened to mention that there were, 5 students referred who were actively using and 28. It's this sort of consistent numbers of what we see every year. And
Yes, in fact, we're in the midst right now of for the budget, putting together kind of our annual reporting of indicators and data. That those numbers are trending consistent with a typical school year. It's early, so those projections could change, but as of right now, yes.
And is that a program we run, the student intervention program?
Yes, so that's our substance use prevention team. It's what's the acronym? BHIP, Behavioral Health Intervention Program. That is initially it was part of the drug-free community grant that we received probably 12, 15 years ago. And so it was grant funded for a while, and then it became part of the HCA funds. So when that grant ran out, the school said, we can't afford to keep these people on. And so the health department, through the cannabis mitigation funds, the HCA funds, was able to keep those staff on. And now we're transitioning them over to the opioid settlement funds to continue to do prevention and intervention work. And we're hoping to get back into the pipeline for the drug-free communities grant, as long as it continues to exist through the CDC. It does still exist, but as you can imagine, a very competitive program, even more competitive now that a lot of federal funds are drying up. Yeah, so those are our staff. They continue to, so the way it works is either a parent may engage with our staff and say, hey, I think I have a child who has some issues and they need some support, and can you help kind of initially find us referral out? Oftentimes, and to the numbers that are reported this month, it's students who get caught like in a bathroom vaping or using another substance. I think it's typically vaping. And they will meet with our staff 4 to 6 times to try to get a sense of why they're using substances and what they're using, and to try to provide them support to get them to stop using those substances. And it's been relatively successful. These are some challenging cases, and our social workers often end up meeting with students more than those 4 to 6 times. Those 4 to 6 are mandated, and then oftentimes you build a relationship with these students. They want to continue to meet with our staff and kind of work through some of the other issues that are why they're using these substances. So it's a great program. And I think, going back to the coalition discussion, I'll just say we're very lucky. Oftentimes, and we have a great relationship with Public Schools of Brookline, Matt Jablon and his team, but oftentimes there's kind of this turf war, right? Schools deal with their buildings and health deals with the public, and to have staff that are actually housed in the high school really allows us to build this great working relationship with schools to work on this substance use issue.
And speaking of funding challenges, you said there was one safety grant that got, the OAS.
Oh, UASI, yeah. So that's still ongoing. We don't have a definitive answer on that yet, but the federal government is continuing to put new requirements on grants, right? And potentially requirements that the town may have concerns about. So just that is beyond my scope. So that the UASI grant is managed by Boston. Boston is the applicant. We are part of that. That's through the fire department is the agency responsible, and we are a sub on that.
And what is fund for us?
Emergency preparedness. So the UASI's emergency preparedness grant funding. And so we've been lucky to, it provides some of the funding for our staff person that does emergency preparedness work here in the health department.
And so that's still in flux. We don't know.
That's still in flux, yeah. But we have contingencies. Scott and I have been planning for that for a couple of years now. So our emergency preparedness is not currently in the town budget. We've been using grant funds to pay for that. We've been transparent with that staff person, but we've been planning for different contingencies to keep funding sources available to keep that staff person, because we think it's critical. So that is person who manages our medical reserve corps, who we rely on for our flu clinics, which was part of the report. So we think it's critically important to keep that staff person and be able to continue to engage with the MRC in that way. And so we're working on
good. All right. Well, I think that covers everything in the agenda, unless there's anything else that people would like to bring up. All right. Well, do we have a motion to adjourn? No, really. All right. I don't think we need a roll call on that. All right. There we go. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Roland.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, David, for joining.